But once the virus came in, once the plague, as I call it, came in, I said, how did they let that happen? How did they let that happen? And how come it didn't go into other sections of China? Why did they block it from leaving Wuhan? But they didn't block it from going to the rest of the world, including the United States. Why is that? Beijing doesn't have it. Other places don't have it. So why is it that it was blocked very effectively from leaving that area and going into China, but it went out to the rest of the world, including the United States? And why didn't they let us go in and help them fix it? So I'm very disappointed in China. Yeah.
On this episode of Just Informed Talk, we're going to take a look at the latest new Q post. Q reminding us to look at how to get to checkmate against these people we are trying to expose today, having this breaking news of the phone call between Joe Biden and the president of Ukraine, where they seem to explicitly discuss the quid pro quo, where Joe was promising $1 billion to get the prosecutor fired who was investigating the corrupt company that his son was working for. We're going to take a look at that, plus a declassified email from Susan Rice, and a whole lot more. You guys are going to want to stick around and check it out. Hi, my name's Craig. Welcome to another episode of Just Informed Talk. You guys know I like to say thanks if you've hit that subscribe button. If you guys haven't done it yet, I don't know what you're waiting for. Come here, click the big red subscribe button, then hit that bell and select the all box so you get notified as soon as all of these videos get posted. So today, we're picking up right where we left off. A lot to cover here. 4277 is where we left off, picking up at 4278. And we have some major stories to get into here today. You guys are going to want to stick around to hear it, but just want to let you know, if you want to support the channel, you guys should download the Brave browser. You can do it for free. It's an internet browser that blocks the ads, and it's got a bunch of other built-in features that are epic, and you guys can check it out now for free. You can download it to your desktop, laptop, your smart device, and it's great because it replaces whatever program you're using now, whether it's Chrome or Safari or Internet Explorer, but it's a better browser. It blocks the ads. It makes your internet experience that much better. And when you download it using the link in the description, they'll make a contribution to this channel. So download it, install it, and run it today. And they'll make a contribution. So it's a great way to help out the channel and get a great product in return. So let's get right into these latest posts. We're starting right here at 4278. Q says to check out this Boston Herald article, which is about disinformation from Schiff and how it damaged America. But it talks about, it's a short read. I'll leave a link if you want to read the full thing. But it ultimately sums it up in saying that Adam Schiff, even though he was getting information in these closed door testimonies, which we're seeing that the transcripts of now, that was saying that there was no evidence of this Russia collusion, he would get on national news every single night and continue to hype it up and to say that there was all of this damning evidence that was just beneath the surface that Americans couldn't see, that showed that President Trump was a Russian or guilty of this Russian collusion narrative. But we know now it was all a lie. It was all a blockade. It was all a way to protect themselves from being investigated for the way they abused the FISA court and the intelligence community's surveillance apparatuses to effectively spy on the Trump campaign in order to benefit the Clinton campaign. So this is a incredible story the mainstream media won't touch, but what you can see so clearly is highlighted right here in this story, where they talk about how the mainstream media was 100% an essential part of it. Listen to this quote here from the New York Post. They quote in this article saying, "The tragic fact is that once prestigious press organizations, including CNN as well as MSNBC, the New York Times, and the Washington Post, weren't fooled by the collusion hoax, they were an essential part of it." So these supposed media or supposed news organizations, I should say, we know they're fake news organizations, were taking the information from Schiff and embellishing it and blowing it out of proportion and presenting it to the American people on a regular basis, causing incredible damage to the Trump administration and their ability to effectively administer their administration's governing policies. So that in and of itself is despicable. It also says here the canard Schiff continued to promulgate was supercharged, though, by the media, who went wall to wall with their coverage. Relics from Watergate were dragged out onto breaking news sets, and we were told how serious the matter was. So yeah, that's what we had to see over this time period, and it was disgusting. But Q goes on to say corporate media control source, Bill Clinton 1996 Telecommunications Act. So what does that mean? That's tying back into this Telecommunications Act, which, it allowed these major corporations to start buying up all of these smaller entities for broadcast. And that's how we've come to where we are today, where, Q has shown us in the past, you have Sinclair Broadcasting. They put out a statement and you have every news station in the entire country reading it and verbatim without any free thought. It's all a monolithic system of control, right? This media cross ownership is what was allowed through this. And that's what people are talking about as being one of the problems here. But listen to this part. It's stated here, and I don't usually use Wikipedia that much, but this is a very good point it talks about here. It says, previously, the Communications Act of 1934, which was the one that controlled all of this before the new Telecommunications Act was put into place, was the statutory framework for U.S. communications policy covering telecommunications and broadcasting. The 1934 Act created the FCC, the agency formed to implement and administer the economic regulation of the interstate activities of the telephone monopolies and the licensing of spectrum used for broadcast and other purposes. The act left most regulation of interstate telephone services to the states. In the 70s and 80s, the combination of technological change, court decisions, and changes in U.S. policy permitted competitive entry into some telecommunications and broadcast markets. In this context, the 1996 Telecommunications Act was designed to allow fewer but larger corporations to operate more media enterprises within a sector. And it uses the example of Clear Channel's dominance in radio. And it says to expand across media sectors through relaxation of cross-ownership rules, thus enabling massive and historic consolidation of media in the United States. These changes amounted to a near total rollback of the New Deal market regulation. So ultimately, it opened the floodgates for these major corporations to create these super monopolies with the telecommunication companies, where you see, like I've said, the example of them all parroting the same talking points on a regular basis, right? It says 2016 campaign plus Clinton Foundation contributions, HRC by the media. Control of information equals control of narrative equals control of the people, Q. And yeah, I think it's as simple as that. So that doesn't need to be explained other than to say that the Clinton Foundation was receiving massive contributions, and so was the HRC campaign, from these media hacks who were basically wanting to promote the governance which was put into law under the Clinton administration, where they could expand their media monopolies without any form of regulation or control. So that's why you turn on all these fake news outlets and they're all spewing the exact same thing. They're all owned by the same few companies. 6 media corporations or whatever own all of the main media channels. So that's what that's referring to. And if you guys have any thoughts on that, please leave your thoughts below. The next one here is a flag, the U.S. flag, and it says for Easton.jpg. You guys will remember in the last video we talked about Easton, this young boy whose father wrote saying that his son lost his life to this DIPG brain cancer in September. And, we prayed for Easton, and this is why we work. This is why we work so hard, as we do it for patriots out there and for those who aren't with us. We have to fight even harder for those who didn't make it. And a lot of people have been, speculating certain things about the hydroxychloroquine and what the health effects it may or may not have. Look, I'm not a doctor, so I'm not going to get into that. You're going to have to try to find that information elsewhere, but it's definitely worth looking at more closely. I do know what we've heard from Q about hydroxychloroquine and its effect with this whole virus and the effect that the president has touted it for having. And look, President Trump just came out and announced he's taking hydroxychloroquine as a prophylactics against it, right? Meaning he's taking it as a way to defend himself from getting it. So think about that. All right, so the next post here, Q gives us, again, this operator with his glove on that shows us the names of the people who lost their lives at Benghazi. And this is a post Q gave us recently talking about how it's worth remembering that this is about chess. You have to think chess. Do you attack the king in the beginning or the middle to end? And does the queen protect the king? And Q talks about, the strategy that is behind why they're not kicking down doors and doing all the things that a lot of us, if we were in charge, let's just be honest, would be doing right now, because there's a tactful way to do this. There's a way that preserves our national security. And as frustrating as it is a consideration. Plus, as we talked about before, there's that old saying, if you're going to take your shot at the king, you better not miss. And that's the big thing here. I mean, of course, metaphorically speaking, right? But that's what people were speculating. And then they were saying, king and queen, who does that represent? A lot of people speculated that that means Obama, and the queen is maybe Michelle Obama or Hillary or something to that effect. But in this, or it could also be Joe Biden. I don't know. But the point is that Q wants us to look back at that post and then give us a pointing up to this post here from Catherine Herridge, who talked about a news conference Q&A with Attorney General Barr, quote, "As to President Obama and VP Biden, whatever their level of involvement, based on the information I have today, I don't expect Mr. Durham's work will continue or will lead to a criminal investigation of either man. Concern is focused on others," at CBS News reporting. So remember what it says here. I have today. He hasn't been presented with that information yet. It's being held by other operators. I know a lot of people have speculated everything from, the military and the tribunal system that they have set up. Their court system is actually outside of the Department of Justice. So if you were going to convict certain people of treason or crimes in that regard, they would go through a different process. Or other people have speculated that, the information just hasn't been put in front of AG Barr on purpose yet, because you have to, as Q, says, you have to get through this. And we're going to talk about what Q says in a minute. He kind of explains this further. But what it ultimately is getting at here is saying that the FISA, right, the FISA abuse that we're exposing right now is the start. It's just the beginning. So Barr doesn't have it yet. That doesn't mean he won't have information in the future that will lead to an investigation of these people. And I think that's what Q is going to tell us about here in the next post. So Q says, how about a nice game of chess? And then it gives us this chessworld.com article where it talks about chess strategy and what you need to know about strategy and tactics. And it goes through the different strategies and tactics that you would use if you were in a certain situation and, playing against somebody trying to defeat them. So Q gives us that, I think, and then tells us this. Objective end. Checkmate king. Do you attack the king at the beginning of the game? Do you attack and remove pawns first? Do you attack and remove bishops, rooks, knights next? Do you attack and remove queen mid to end? Is the game being played public or private? Do emotions affect critical thinking? Additionally, important king control pieces eliminate rogue elements. Additionally, how do you set the stage board regarding public opinion and optics at this time? Q. Going back to what Attorney General Barr said. So, think about it. Who were the pawns? The pawns were the deep state bureaucrats who were leftovers from the Obama administration. You had to get through the swamp and start clearing the rosters of all these people who have been put in key positions as sleepers to be activated at a later date. The bishops, the rooks, the knights. We're talking Comey, we're talking Clapper, we're talking Rice, we're talking Powers, we're talking Biden, the rest, right? The queen, like I've said, Hillary or Biden, something in that realm. Maybe Michelle Obama, not sure about that. Then, of course, then do you make a move at the king? That's the thing. You have to go through in the steps that it takes. Do emotions affect critical thinking? Of course they do. And especially given the serious nature of all this, it's almost impossible to check your emotion at the door when you're talking about treason, you're talking about betrayal, you're talking about people who betrayed not only their oath of office, but the trust of the American people, and at the expense of the American people, made themselves rich and did it in the most disgustingly evil way. So with that, I just figured we'd talk about that. And then it talks about the king control pieces, the rogue elements that exist. Q's talked about this. We're talking about the splinter cell factions out of these intel agencies who came and worked now as rogue operators, rogue elements. You're talking about people who were weaponized by this system and then were broken off and then, have been effectively helping in certain areas. A lot of people have made speculations, and I'm just going to say it, about what happened with this coronavirus. How is it allowed to spread? Why did it hit in China? Who helped, create the scenario where it was released, if it was released from this weapons lab, as most people have come to speculate at this point. So these are things that we have to consider, and then you have to set the stage for public opinion, because you don't want to have, I mean, a lot of these people are so brainwashed by the fake news and the fake narrative that's being set up by these people that you really have a lot of people who have been activated, who, Antifa and all these other organizations, who will be out in the streets, with militant tactics that you have to consider as far as national security goes. I mean, at what point is it more, do you have to strategically look at this as a full-scale insurgency that we're fighting here? And I think that's the point. So the next one here talks about POTUS, President Trump. He's daily ingesting hydroxychloroquine to prevent COVID-19. And then it talks about, then this is the news that just broke here the other day. This was pre-announcement, tools, sources, data, COVID-1, COVID-2 analysis, etc., provided to factually challenge narrative, full attack versus HCQ by media and Dems. Why? Why wouldn't the media Dems want to work on all fronts to find a possible solution, immediate dismissal? Why doesn't the Democrats want, the media Democrats want the pandemic, rearranged Democrat panic to slow stop? Why doesn't the media Democrats want society to heal, recover? Why doesn't the media Democrats want the people to no longer fear going outside? Why doesn't the media Democrats want the people to point the finger at China as the source? Why doesn't the media Democrats want people to return to work, normal daily lives? Who benefits the most? Why does corrupt media or corporate media Democrats attempt to control us? Why does corporate media Democrats challenge, attack anyone who defies pushed coordinated narrative? Why does corporate media Democrat attempt to prevent individual critical thinking public? Is this about the virus or something else? Everything is at stake this election. Q. So yeah, I mean, that's pretty self-explanatory. They don't want us to wake up. They want to keep you asleep. We've seen enough evidence to show, and had enough, at least anecdotal and some research studies, and different doctors have come out and said, look, this works for our patients. Why aren't you using it? You have people at the VA. You have soldiers who've been taking this for who knows how long before they go travel abroad. And it seems to have this effect. And President Trump now has come out and said that he's taking it. So why do they want us to not be able to get this solution out there, to find a cure? I don't know. It seems that's what they want, though. They want to keep us panicked. They want to keep us locked down in our houses. They want to have an excuse to have this mail-in voting. And they want to have an excuse to, continue to control you via fear. And they certainly don't want you to look at China and to even critically think about that at all, because then you'll see how these corporations have been infiltrated by the Chinese communists, and that's why they're slowly selling us out to them as in the long run. And they certainly know that 4 more years of President Trump means everything is at stake this election. So that might answer a lot of those questions right there. The next post Q gives us says, when does your enemy expend ammunition? Do you expend ammunition against a weak opponent? Do you expend ammunition against a non-threat? Critical thinking, media cluster bombs, attacks versus POTUS. Critical thinking, media cluster bombs, attacks versus Q. So I think ultimately what Q is saying is that, they're so predictable and they're so inept in their attacks against President Trump and Q that, when do we really need to expend our reserve of ammunition against these people, metaphorically speaking, of course? That's really the question I think Q's posing to us. And, a lot of these people, they're just talking heads. They really don't matter in the long run. We are trying to defeat them, and I think we're succeeding. That's why Q has said we are the news now, and it shows. We are actually effectively superseding their message on a regular basis, because people are waking up to the lies that they've been fed for so long. Now, the next one here gives us this Hill.com article talking about Abedin's ties to the Muslim Brotherhood. Now, it's interesting that Q should post this this is an article from 2016, by the way. It connects Abedin to the Muslim Brotherhood. And I asked the question on Twitter the other day about what happens when the contents of Anthony Weiner and Abedin's laptop are exposed. The ones that had a file marked insurance, the ones that made reportedly veteran NYPD detectives sick to their stomach. And some of them, I believe, even were crying after they saw some of the horrific things that were contained inside that laptop. So Q's pointing us to that, and infiltration, not invasion, for future events, Q. So we have to remember that too, that a lot of this information is going to be exposed, and it gets really ugly from here. So the next post Q wants us to look at is this Bloomberg post where it talks about China wanting to patent Gilead's experimental coronavirus drug. Chinese researchers applied for a national patent on an experimental Gilead Sciences drug that they believe might fight the novel coronavirus. So, this is the drug commonly known as remdesivir, which we've heard a lot about in relation to hydroxychloroquine, if not for anything else than the wildly different price between the two drugs, where you have a regular dose of hydroxychloroquine's, 50 cents or a couple bucks, whereas this drug is $1,000 or something in that realm. So it's interesting to see that the Wuhan Institute of Virology, based in the Chinese city at the center of the epidemic, applied for a patent in China for the use of the antiviral drug. So then Q in the next post links us to this, right? This is from the Gates Foundation, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. It shows us who's on the board there. And one of the very interesting names I just happened to see was Anthony S. Fauci. And then the next link that Q gives us talks about the global health leaders launching a decade of vaccines collaboration. And this talks about how the World Health Organization, UNICEF, and the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Disease and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation have announced a collaboration. Now, mind you, this is a statement that was released in 2010, but they say that they announced a collaboration to increase coordination across the international vaccine community and create a global vaccine action plan. Yeah, I'm sure that's going to end well for humanity. But when you connect all the dots, it doesn't look very good for those who have put all of this together. And it seems like it was a part of a broader agenda that's just come come into its maturity now. How do you force vaccines globally? Well, it seems pretty simple. You you create a pandemic by releasing a super virus, and then all of a sudden, everybody's desperately begging for this, even if they don't realize what it could or could not do as far as their health goes. So, yeah, it's disturbing. Q's giving us a lot to look at here. The next post is very interesting. It is this link to this Nabu Leaks channel. And I really encourage you, when I started this morning, this Nabu Leaks channel had 200 subscribers. Now it's got 11,000 subscribers. And basically these videos are the transcribed to English videos that show the quid pro quo conversations held by Joe Biden with President Poroshenko and John Kerry, where they just talk about, oh yeah, okay, so here's what we'll do. You get rid of this prosecutor, then I'll come over and sign this aid bill for $1 billion and they try to make it sound all, fluffy, like nothing's going on here, when in reality, it is they had no proof that President Trump was engaged in quid pro quo with the president of Ukraine. We have documentable evidence of not only Joe Biden bragging about it, but now the actual phone conversations. These are the actual conversations where they say, yes, I'm going to do this. And then Joe Biden's like, yeah, and now you will get the $1 billion that we were going to give you. So it's the proof. This is the smoking gun evidence, but the fake news won't touch it. They won't talk about it. They're just going to pretend this doesn't exist, and it's no big deal. It's okay to accuse President Trump of corruption and, quid pro quo without any evidence. But when you have explicit evidence that shows directly that Joe Biden was doing the same thing they accused President Trump of, you just crickets. You don't hear anything. So I'll leave a link to it. You want to watch all these videos. I've watched through them all, and yeah, it's about a half hour's worth of hilarious hilariously disturbing conversation where, Joe's just muddling his way through it, and President Poroshenko is basically just doing everything he can to get that $1 billion, because that's how these corrupt people work. And it's disgusting. But yeah, that's interesting. Q points us right to it. And then, of course, right after that, Q gives us this Catherine Herridge release where it shows a declassified Rice email. Now, this is the email. Remember, this is from January 20th, 2017, where she went in and she wrote this email to herself saying, we're going to do everything by the book when it comes to Flynn. We're not going to do anything wrong. We're not going to get anyone in trouble. But this is the full email, right? And we had seen a little bit of it, but now we have the full declassified email. And this is the part that was declassified. It says, Director Comey affirmed that he is proceeding by the book as it relates to law enforcement. From a national security perspective, Comey said he does have some concerns that incoming NSA Flynn is speaking frequently with Russian Ambassador Kislyak. Comey said that could be an issue as it relates to sharing some sensitive information. President Obama asked if Comey was saying that the National Security Council should not pass sensitive information related to Russia to Flynn. Comey replied, potentially. He added that he has no indication thus far that Flynn has passed classified information to Kislyak, but he noted that the level of communication is unusual. So let me just refresh everyone who forgets what this email is. The day that President Trump was being inaugurated in office, right before that happened, Susan Rice had to get on this email server to write this email to herself, right? Where she basically lays out how they were just covering their tracks and doing everything by the book. Like I said, it's like a bank robber writing himself an email before he robs a bank and saying, I'm just going to withdraw money from the bank today, and I am not planning on robbing it. I'm going to do it by the book, and then going and robbing the bank. And then they go to trial years later, and they're like, yes, sir, look at this evidence. I did not rob the bank. I clearly didn't rob the bank because I wrote an email to myself about not robbing the bank. I mean, that's my, analogy. I just think it's insane, but that's where we're at. If you guys want to look, I'll leave links to everything below. And finally, here it gives a link to this Hannity post or this Hannity clip where they talk about what happened in the U.S. to the U.S. president in the 2016 election, and throughout the first 2 years of his election was apparent. It says abhorrent, I think, is what is said, but they quote him, Attorney General Barr saying apparent, and it was a grave injustice and it was unprecedented in American history. We saw two different standards of justice emerge. So that's what it is. Attorney General Barr is laying it out. I'll leave links to everything if you want to watch these clips. But finally, Q says it's a marathon, not a sprint. And it's referring to somebody on the board who's basically saying, yeah, we have to wait longer. And Q says it's a marathon, not a sprint. So that's where we're going to go ahead and leave it. A few more things before we go. You can find me over here on Twitter at JustInformYou. It's a great way to connect to the channel, and at Informed News. Plus, we have justinformednews.com, the official website for Just Informed Talk. Links to the Q stuff, different news sites, breaking news, and of course, the latest videos from the channel. You should go check that out. And BitChute.com/JustInformedTalk is the backup channel, so go check that out as well. A couple other ways you can help out the channel are financial. There's Patreon. It's a crowdfunding website. Your monthly donation keeps this channel alive. They demonetized it at YouTube. They've tried to put this channel out of business. I wouldn't be able to do it without your support. So thank you to everybody who makes that monthly donation. It makes a big difference. So check out the link in the description if you can help. That's great, and I really appreciate it. I also have a GoFundMe set up. If you want to make a one-time or anonymous donation, links to everything that we've talked about today will be in the description. Now, before we go, we do a segment at the end of each one of these episodes called God's Grace is Greater, where we talk about God's grace and how it is truly greater. And today, I have a quick verse out of 2 Timothy chapter 4, verse 1 through 5 that's so important to understanding what we're meant to do. People go, what am I supposed to do? How do I help, fight this evil? Well, this is how you do it. Watch. It talks about fulfilling your ministry. It says, before God and Christ Jesus, who is going to judge the living and the dead, and by his appearing in his kingdom, I solemnly charge you, proclaim the message, persist in it, whether convenient or not, rebuke, correct, and encourage with great patience and teaching, for the time will come when they will not tolerate sound doctrine, but according to their own desires will accumulate teachers for themselves, because they have an itch to hear something new. They will turn away from hearing the truth and will turn aside to myths. But as for you, keep a clear head about everything. Endure hardship, do the work of an evangelist, and fulfill your ministry. And that's my message to all of you out there. During these times when they've turned away from hearing the truth, it is incumbent upon each and every one of us to keep a clear head and endure this hardship and do the work of an evangelist, which means that we must proclaim the message of Christ, persist in it, whether convenient or not, and rebuke, correct, and encourage with great patience and teaching others. So that's my message to you. I hope that it helps, and that's where I'm going to go ahead and leave it. I want to say thanks for watching. You can come here, hit that subscribe button if you haven't. Also, hit it, punch it, tap it, whatever. Hit the like button if you guys like this content and want to see me make more. But that's going to be it for me. I want to say thank you for watching Just Informed Talk. My name is Craig. Godspeed, and God bless each and every one of you, Patriots.